Hello, how are you all doing today? I am working on getting Instagram set up. There we go. All right, I think I'm getting to the point where I might have this figured out how to do this a little quicker over on Instagram. I think I have an idea for next week. We'll see. All right. I have fun stuff for you today. Just let me make sure that there we go. I have it up. And hello, Monica. Happy hump day to you. So hopefully everyone is doing well. It is just now 12 o'clock. And of course, this is a publication week. So that's exciting. I have my lights on in the background that are doing the little rainbow thing. And I'm thinking certain colors make me look very, very red. So maybe I should not have them. Like, I'm good with the blue. Like, the blue background kind of doesn't make me look so red. But when the red comes on, I look very red, right? Like, okay, no. Actually, it might not even be the red that was doing it. I don't know. Maybe it's the yellow. See, look, now I look really, now I look really red. Now that the yellow's up, I think that's what it is. Maybe I should just switch it back to plain old white, right? I mean, why distract you with the fun colors going on? Let's see. Did that do it? Yeah, I think that's plain old white. Or we could do plain old blue. Oh, no. Okay, let's see. No. No. Ah! No. I think we're going to go with white. I'm having way too much fun with my colors. All right. I'm killing some time until everybody shows up. Linda's Crafts says hello, and it's been a while since Linda's Crafts has been here. Well, I'm glad you are back. So that is awesome that you are here. Let's see. And like I said, we have the September issue is being released on Friday, which is super exciting. I've been talking to a couple companies who are going to become sponsors, most likely. And so we'll be able to share some stuff with you. Probably have them come and do a little live along with us to show off their awesome things that I know you guys will like. I want to assure you, as I get myself stuck on a piece of yarn, I want to assure you that when it comes to sponsors, because I'm doing things like product reviews with them and having them, if they want and if they're able to, come on and join a live with us stuff. And of course, putting ads in the magazine and such. I'm not taking sponsorships from just anybody who's like, hey, can we be a sponsor? I need to know that it's something that I actually think is worth whatever it is. It's a good product and it's worth the money that you need to invest to get the product, right? I don't want to just take a sponsor just because they're willing to give me money. I want to make sure that any sponsors we use within Crochet Foundry are companies that I feel good about their products. So that's why I've kind of been slow as far as getting the sponsors going, because I'm trying to make sure that, I'm not just telling you guys to go out there and buy some snake oil. Right? So there we go. And today I have a few fun things to share with you. We're going to give you a little bit of some sneak peeks, okay, for the September issue. And then I have a few fun crafts. Maybe I'll show a little bit right now, and then we can come back to them again later. That way I don't start the sneak peeks until we're like 5 or 10 minutes in. So people have time to arrive. I didn't mean to leave that one way over there. I meant to have it over here where I could reach it better. But I got on one of those, like, cleaning things. And all right. So here's a couple of the crafts that I was doing over at Penzic when I was doing the medieval stuff. Okay. So this is Viking wire weaving. All right. It's hard to get a really nice shot of this for you. But it's essentially, it looks almost like a knitted tube. There are 5, and it really is. That's all it is. You're just knitting with wire and no knitting needles. You actually wrap it around a dowel. We just used wooden dowels, and we used this little piece of the more gold colored wire across the top of the dowel. And then you just have these strands of copper wire. I think this was maybe 4 or 5 different, like each strand, you cut them at like 18 inches is what she had them cut us at. No, I think she had them initially, the first one was like 12 inches. And then she's like, after that, you can go up to like 18. She said not to go much higher than 18. I, of course, being me, went to like 2 feet, which is like 24 inches. And it was a little bit, the first few were a little bit difficult. And one of the reasons why you don't want to go too long is because the more you like pull on the wire, the more brittle it will be in the final product. So not only do you not want it to go too long, because then it becomes unwieldy, because you're just basically like, think of like just taking yarn and knitting around a dowel, but just having a needle at the end of the yarn as opposed to knitting needles, like a yarn needle, and how you'd have to like go in and out and in and out and in and out, and eventually your arm doesn't go that far, and So that's what Viking wire weaving is. It's kind of like knitting around a tube. And then when you're done, we take it off, and there's this paddle thing that they have that you pull it through. So if you have, here we go. It's like this, okay? Only instead of being to measure your, the size of your knitting needles, you take it and you pull your wire weaving through, and it compresses it, and then you go to the next smaller size and you pull it through and it compresses it, and then you go to the next smaller size and you pull it through and it compresses it, and that's the smallest size we went. So which apparently was 10.5 millimeters all the way around. So my little piece of Viking weaving, what? That was not even close to English. My little piece of Viking wire weaving is apparently 10.5 inches around, because 10.5 inches, 10.5 millimeters around, because that's what this little knitting gauge says. And I believe this is in, no, it's not in millimeters. It's a size 10.5. So, if somebody wants to tell me what a size 10.5 knitting needle is in millimeters, or if you want to look it up, that's what this is around. I was realizing 10.5 millimeters is like, well, it's a little over 1 centimeter, which it looks like that could be. But I'm looking at what says 1, and it is most definitely not only 1 millimeter around. So yeah, this is like the needle sizes, where the sizes are numbers, not where like it's actual millimeters. I don't understand why we just don't do everything in millimeters. Like, toss the things that are random numbers, toss the things that are random letters. Let's just measure crochet hooks and knitting needles in millimeters. And the same goes for measurements. You'll notice in Crochet Foundry, we don't have sizes now. We're not doing sizes like small, medium, large, extra large. We're not doing sizes like size 12, size 22, whatever. What we do is, if there are 4 sizes, they are size 1, 2, 3, 4. If there are 10 sizes, they're size 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? And then, so we have them just, however many sizes, there's a number for each. And then in the measurement section, we tell you the size 1 has these measurements when it's finished. The size 2 has these measurements when it's finished. And we also tell you that whatever it is, if say it's a sweater, it should be worn with 2 inches of positive ease. So you measure around the chest. So you measure your chest. Your chest is 46 inches. Your chest is 46 inches. It says it should be worn with 2 inches of positive ease. So 46 positive 2 would be 48. So you find whichever one has the closest to 48-inch chest, and that's the one you make, right? And we're not going for that happens to be a size 12 or that happens to be a size large or whatever. It's just these are your measurements. These are the measurements, and the smallest size is a size 1, and the next size is a size 2, and the next size is a size 3, is number 3, and so on and so forth, okay? That way, when we're referring to the different sizes within the pattern, we can say, sizes 1 and 2, stop here, sizes 3 and 4, go for 3 more rows, or whatever. And it's, you have a reference when you're making your own size based on the 1, 2, 3, 4s or whatever. And we don't have to list everything for size 36 chest. It's just a little easier that way. But it's, it's the same thing. Obviously I got on this rant based on the using this knitting needle gauge, that has random numbers instead of, I know they're not random, but they don't mean anything. They're not how many millimeters or anything. And I just, anything but the metric system, but that's not even it. Because it's everywhere. It's not just America. It's not just, there's always the jokes that Americans will use anything but the metric system when there's a picture of a fossil and then a banana next to it for scale. It's like Americans will use anything but the metric system. It's not even that, because it's not just Americans. It's everywhere. I just wish we would go with the actual measurements. And for knitting needles and crochet hooks, that should be millimeters, because it's a small enough measurement that it works, right? Totally. So that is my rant, and I'm sure you will hear me on that soapbox a million more times in our time together, but not today. Hello, Kat. Or hello, Gabby. This is Gabby. Hi, Gabby. So there we go. And that was my Viking wire weaving that I made when I was over doing my medieval thing last month. And it's the first time I've been wanting to learn to do this forever. And then I learned to do it. And the teacher comes over to me and she's like, oh, you've done this before. And I said, no, I haven't. And she says, oh, you're one of those. I said, I'm one of those. I was like, what is that, a ringer? And she's like, no, she's like, you're just like me. You look at a craft and you pick it up. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm one of those. And she's like, it's okay. I am too. I get it. Because, people, you sometimes feel kind of guilty when you're in a class and you're like, and the person next to you is struggling so hard and they're seeing you and you're just going, I've got this thing done, and they're still trying to do the first 3 rows. And they're like, how did you pick it up so fast? And I was like, sometimes I lie and I tell them I've done it before because I don't want them to feel bad, right? What do you use the Viking wire weaving for? Monica, that's a beautiful question. They, back in Viking times, they would often they would make this even smaller. Sometimes they would make it smaller and pull it smaller, but it was used for jewelry, various things. And you'll also find that once this gets smushed, you can't turn it back into a circle. So sometimes if it had gotten smushed, they would then use it for trim on their clothing. If it started to get smushed, they would just smush it the rest of the way, make it flat, and then use it, put it on trim on their clothing. But in the round form, it was often used for jewelry and such. For this piece, what I was thinking, because it is a tube, okay, it's like a straw, only I wouldn't try drinking from it because it's got a couple holes in it instead of just the one at the top and the one at the bottom. It's that wouldn't work very well, right? I was thinking it might be fun to thread some yarn through there, make a little crochet or something and thread some yarn, thread it through there, and have a little necklace like this. Because of course this is just copper, what we used in the class, because she was trying not to have us use super expensive materials that, when we're just learning how to make it. So this is really cheapo copper. So you don't want to wear it against here, or make it long, make it as a bracelet and have it right against your skin, because it will turn you green because it is just copper, right? So I was thinking of running some yarn or something through it and making a necklace where this just kind of hangs off the bottom of it, right? I thought that would be really fun to do with this. Obviously, I'd have to do something to finish up the ends. I'll figure that out. I'll decide what to do. I don't know. I'm gonna figure it out. But what I know of for that it was used for was basically jewelry, and what I see people using it for within the medieval reenactment community is jewelry. And then once it gets smushed, you use it for trim because you spend a lot of time making it and you can't turn it back into a circle again, back into a tube again. So when it gets smushed, it's smushed. You might as well smush it the rest of the way, use it for trim rather than tossing it, right? So that's that. Although I think like a small piece that you like smush would make a really cool ring, right? But again, if you're making it out of really cheap, but I mean, you can make it out of any sort of wire that you can do this with, right? Like it could be gold, it could be silver. I don't know. Do they make titanium or do they make titanium wire like this? I don't see why not. Whatever they can make skinny wire that, is malleable out of, they can do it. So yeah. The other really fun craft I thought you guys might like that I was doing there is stick weaving. Okay. So I'm going to show you this little slideshow of the teasers for the September issue. And then after that, I have a blog post over on Jessie at Home. Here, I'll show you okay. I'll bring this blog post up over on Jessie at Home. I'll share the screen with you that actually teaches you how to do stick weaving. This is stick weaving. This is actually using a jig. That's a ponytail holder because I couldn't get it closed this time around. If this jig doesn't quite have enough room, like this way to really close well once you have the yarn on it. But honestly, most of the time stick weaving is not done with a jig. Most of the time stick weaving is done with sticks held in your hand, and you can only use as many as you can actually hold in your hand. Okay, so I would maybe do like what this is right now, 11. With this size sticks, I would probably only do like 7 or 8. And you make these strips. And like my mother has a belt that she wears with some of her medieval garb that is made out of stick weaving that she loves. And I held it in my hand because it's only like this wide for my mom's belt that I made her, right? So you can hold it in your hand. You would see medieval times, you would see like blankets made out of this or like cloaks or whatever. And they just sewed the pieces next to each other. So we'll look at that in a moment. But first, why don't we pop over here and look at these little, I made a slideshow. So, I can hit play. So I didn't actually like change the timing on any of them. So these are teasers for the September issue of Crochet Foundry. So you can see we've got some fun things going on. This issue comes out on Friday. You can see some of the yarns we're using. Here we go. And this is a different one, obviously. That's linen stitch or moss stitch, which is one of my absolute favorite stitches. I love using that stitch. Oh, we're being a little slow. Hold on. Maybe it's because I don't know. Let me go over to here. Maybe it's because I opened up a different file. Let me pull that file up. Maybe. Come on. Where are you? Oh, now it's going. I have to find it. Give me a second. You can still admire. Here we go. September. There. Now we're going. All right. It just wanted to actually have that open in my file folder there. So here you can see we have some really fun fabrics, like crocheted fabric, yarns and stitches, which combined make crochet fabric. We have some really fun yarn and stitch combinations going on here. And ooh, I like her stitch marker. It's got like little stars in it. Nifty. and some really nice finished items that you are going to see on Friday. But for now, we just have these nifty little sneak peeks. So I am I really love this upcoming issue. I think you guys are going to think it's really cool as well. If you are, if you get the newsletter, obviously, if you get the newsletter, that's the word I was trying to come up with, then you saw some of these sneak peeks along with one of the illustrations from the issue that I went ahead and shared, because I had actually shared it last week on Wednesday night in our sit and stitch. It's either last week or the week before. I shared it in our sit and stitch because the designer of one of the pieces that's in the illustration happened to be at our live Zoom sit and stitch. And so I just felt the need to show it off because I wanted to show her the illustration and she was all excited. So that was really cool. So here are these sneak peeks. And this issue, which is the September issue, comes out on Friday. So you can get it then if you are a member. Let's see. Trying to find the right button. Here we go. Back to me. And I'm going to then stop this. There we go. Exit slideshow. Maybe. Everything's a little slow when you have a live going on. That's the other thing. When you have the live going on, all of the other functions on the computer just take a little bit longer because it's like, wait, no. Like I'm trying to exit the slideshow so I can show you guys the stick weaving tutorial I wanted to share with you. But there we go. I didn't want to exit because it was just way too much thinking involved for this little guy, this little computer of mine here. All right. So then we have over here, I told you we have this. Oh, you know what? I have been ignoring the comments. Okay, but that's okay. We seem to be good because I had the banners up. And Instagram, let's see. No more questions or anything on Instagram. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to pull up. This is the site if you wanted to do some of the Viking wire weaving, sorry. The stick weaving, which is super fun. Here is that post. And that is not okay. Sorry, I have an ad that I'm going to have to talk about with my advertising company. All right. So here we have a fun stick weaving tutorial, and you can see that I was using these, right, with the little jig here. But you don't have to use a jig. You can actually make these little stick weaving sticks. Like you see how they have a little hole at the end. So the top is kind of pointy. You can like take a dowel. You can literally make these so easy. You can take a dowel and put it in a pencil sharpener. It just don't make it super sharp. And if you do by mistake, just take a nail file or something to it to make it not, so you don't stab yourself because ow. And then you just drill a hole through the bottom. And like, if you want to be really fancy pants, I have some of these. I have several sets that were handmade that were given as gifts that were literally somebody took a dowel, put it in a pencil sharpener, and then they actually like used, a little carving knife or whatever to shave so that the other end has a little flat spot on it, and then drill through it so that when you put your yarn through, when you put your thread through here, it doesn't make a bump, right? You can thread through that way, or the way that you see here, or you can also thread the yarn itself straight through. Either way works. But the using the little piece of crochet thread first to make the loop, and then pulling the yarn through that, it makes it so that you don't have to cut the loop if you want to keep this little loop here later. And it also makes it so that you don't have to worry about whether or not the yarn will actually fit through the hole in your stick. So yeah, you can see for the one that I made in this sample, I held a few pieces of yarn together. It looks like I had 3 pieces of yarn that I was holding together. and then wove. In this situation, it's just one piece of yarn, but it's some yarn that I spun on my drop spindle that's a little thicker. It's actually a 2-ply drop spindle yarn. So you just weave it back and forth like you would any kind of weaving you do. You want to try not to pull it tight, make it go like that, right? And then every once in a while, you can kind of pull those dowels up a little bit and keep on weaving, and the weaving drops down to the yarn. Isn't that nifty? I love it. It's so cool, right? The weaving drops down to the yarn. So how long your yarn ends are is how long your weaving can be. So if you're making a belt, you make these yarn ends long enough for your belt, right? And again, if you have a small enough number that you can hold them in your hand, traditionally they were held in the hands. We don't know if people actually used these little jigs. This might just be like modern day people getting like excited and going, oh, I can do that with a jig, when the whole point of this was probably you didn't need anything fancy like this. It was just something you could do holding the little sticks in your hand and doing this. It didn't require anything fancy. So then when you're done, you pull the dowels out all the way and you have those loops. And again, because I have the loops here tied on to the crochet thread that's going through the dowel, I was able to cut the crochet thread, and then I still had the loops at the bottom there. And then I used those. I essentially crocheted those loops together. And you see how I just like made a chain with them to pull them together to finish it off. But you can sew things, you can fold it, you could also fold them over and sew it with some sewing thread or some scrap pieces of yarn or whatever, to just hold those ends down, whatever it takes to hold those ends down. And I just made, once I did this, what I did was I took the other end of the yarn and I pulled it tight. So if I had done the little kind of crochet edge up here, then I took this end and pulled it. So it tightened all of these loops. So you can see here, this side is where all those loops are, but I had pulled the yarn on this end and then made it nice and flat. Okay. Once you've pulled it, you want to lay it down and kind of adjust things. You might find that some of the pieces of yarn you need to pull tighter so that you don't have like space, right? But then some of the other pieces might be like pulled up and it might be bubbling because not everything's laid flat. I find that if I lay them out and I just kind of start at the end that doesn't have the yarn hanging out of it and just kind of pat it, and whenever there's a hole, I slide it, but I just kind of pat it. It really helps it even out pretty nicely. So I just made that full rectangle there. Okay. And then I folded it in half. Well, then I tied little knots on the other end. So I tied the knot because there's 2 strands coming out of each hole. I tied one strand from one hole to the one strand from the hole next to it, so that they were actually, instead of tying both of these together, I would tie like one of these and one of these together so that it's not going to pull right through again. And then again, you can fold it under and sew it. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have to tie that if you folded it under and sewed it across, whatever you want to do to finish it off, right? But really, medieval times, they probably just would have tied those things together and left it as fringe, especially if it's like a blanket or a belt or whatever. So I then folded it in half and I sewed my little side pieces together. When you sew your little side pieces together, you have to make sure that you're not just going back and forth this way, because it doesn't always work. It'll slide right off. If you do, you have to make sure that you've gone and you've caught one of the warp threads, one of these long pieces of yarn, so that it doesn't pull off. Or the other thing you can do is you can catch like a few of the loops at the edge of this one with a few of the loops of the edge of the next one, and so on and so forth, so that it actually stays together. So here you can see I made this little bag and I used my little tie-ends. I just folded them over on the outside and used the little tie-ends as a little piece of decoration. And then I added little fringy bits on the bottom. That's actually where the fold is. Okay, but I added little fringy bits on the bottom. I put a little handle bag strap across the top that's just yarn twisted together. And I used it for a little bag for this giant brooch and my veil pins and stuff. It's just a nice little bag that holds things and keeps them clean and safe and padded, because it's nice and padded, so that I don't have to worry about like any of the little beads and everything on here. Somebody made this for me. Coming off. I know that's a giant brooch, but when you're talking about medieval stuff and the countess and all that, it works nicely. So there you go, the little stick weaving tutorial are off, and I again forgot to go back to comments to see if anybody had any questions. Wow, now it's taking a long time because I just hit like 10 buttons at once, and it's like, what are you doing to me? Ah, my poor computer. I clearly need a computer that can handle too much stuff, because I am definitely the too much stuff kind of girl, aren't I? All right, so there we go. All right, I have more people have joined over on Instagram, but no comments. And I don't have any more comments over here on Facebook or YouTube. We have a very quiet group today, guys. Usually you guys are so much more talkative. It's fine. Don't feel bad. Sorry, I wasn't trying to like guilt you or anything. It's just I'm so used to like questions and questions and questions. We do have a live today from a Zoom sit and stitch today from 7 to 9, which is 6.5 hours from now. It is currently 12:30 Eastern, so from 7 to 9 Eastern is the sit and stitch Zoom. And I do not have my little schedule like grabbing distance from myself here. I am today going to get the rest of September and maybe a couple more months added onto the schedule. I looked at the poll I did with you guys for what times work well and came up with a schedule that is like the first Wednesday is always 7 to 9 p.m. because this is the first Wednesday of September. I'm starting the schedule this month. I'm starting this new schedule this month. So the first Wednesday of every month is always 7 to 9 p.m. And then there's 4 different time frames, and whenever there's a 5th Wednesday, we do another 7 to 9, because that was definitely the most common time. I think there's a 7 to 9, and there's either a 6 to 8 or a 5 to 7. I don't remember, because those were like another popular time. There's a 1 to 3. And I don't remember if the other one is 10 to 12 in the morning or is 3 to 5 in the afternoon. I feel like it might be 10 to 12 in the morning, which doesn't thrill me because I'm not a morning person, but I only have to do it once a month. I am not a morning person. So one of my solutions for not being a morning person is like I do all of the having to be up and about things in the first thing in the morning. So if I have to go to the grocery store, it's the first thing I do in the morning. I do that usually on Mondays. My grocery shopping day is Mondays. I get up in the morning, I get shower, dressed, all that stuff, and then I go to the grocery store. But then anything around the house, anything down here, if there's like cleaning and organizing that needs to happen, if there's measuring things or photographing things, like when I get the samples in, I need to be better at this, but when the samples arrive, I photograph them in any place that I think might be like a more intensive spot for like the tech editor might want to look at it. I'll take a photo so that I can get those photos to the tech editors, because since this isn't like, if you're all working together in a building, in an office building or whatever, then the tech editor can look at the sample to be like, is this really supposed to be this way? But in this situation where everybody's working from home and I have a tech editor in Kansas and a tech editor in Illinois, and I live in New Jersey, when the samples are with me, because my photographer is here, I have to just take good pictures, right? I do ask the designers to take good pictures because they're going to know better than me what areas the tech editors might need to really look at, where there might be some place where they have a question. But then I also need to be better at taking them. And that way the tech editors have something to look at. It makes their lives a little easier. I don't know where this started. I don't remember why I started this conversation, guys. Like, oh, mornings, because I'm not a morning person. Oh my god. Yeah, so those are the kind of things I do, like when I get up in the morning after I've gotten up, showered, gotten dressed, had breakfast, everything, made my coffee, all of that. Then I do anything that's up and about kind of things, like taking the photos, organizing, just anything that's up and about that I need to do for the day, I do then. Because otherwise I found that if the first thing I do in the morning after I'm like up and dressed and everything is sit down at the computer, I start doing this at the computer. So, because I'm not a morning person. But you know what, on the once a month, I'm pretty sure there is a 10 to 12 once a month, because there were some people who wanted it. So there were enough people that it made sense to do. So, you know, that'll be fine, because I'm not going to fall asleep while we're doing a sit and stitch, because y'all are here and we're having a great time and we're chatting, and it's, you know, it's not like me staring at a computer screen and typing stuff and all. Yeah, you know, that's kind of stuff that just falls asleep sometimes. So, you put Green Day on in the background of Pink Floyd and that'll help. But anyway, yeah, so I honestly thought these things that I had going on today, Lynn's craft, it's Wednesday and everyone is already done with the week. Yeah, that's why nobody's saying anything, right? Because it's and okay, wait, I just figured out the other reason why nobody is saying anything. Oh my god, I love you so much, Monique, but Monique just now showed up. This is why it's so quiet. Lynn's Crest is saying it's Wednesday and everybody is already done with the week, and Monique just now showed up. And Monique always has the fun and awesome questions and comments too. So Monique, what you missed was the slideshow of all of the sneak peeks, and you missed me showing off my Viking stick weaving. But here is, I will show you again. Here is the link to where you can learn how to do Viking stick weaving. So anyone who didn't get that, it will not cut and paste off of the screen. I'm sorry. But it will, if the any of the mods wants to type it into the thing here, into the comments, I might be able to, let me see, can I make a comment? I can. Let's see. So that might now show up on Instagram and YouTube. I think it did. And I should be able to toss it in. I mean, not Instagram, YouTube. That would have been Facebook and YouTube. And now if I toss it into Instagram, there we go. So you should, that will cut and paste. The link in the comments will cut and paste, because the link on the screen will not. So if any of you want to see that tutorial, I'll pop it up on the screen again. Here's the tutorial on Jessie at Home on how to do the stick weaving. And I do not have a tutorial for any of the Viking wire weaving. It's just scrolling really slow because, again, it's just way too much bandwidth for my computer here doing this while there's a live going on. It got a little confused. So there we go. Yeah, and yes, back to here. All right, I'll turn this off, go back to here. And yes, Monique, you missed the show and tell. What, for those, nobody asked this, but I was going to tell you anyway. Is one of the what I've been using this size for. You saw the little bag that I made in the tutorial, but we did a bunch of them that are, you can see the length on this one. We actually only made it about this, maybe about this long. And then what we did, my mom and I were making these. I was making the yarn because this is, like I said, it's stick weaving. You can kind of see, you can see it's a 2-ply. Here, let me try to. So I have this kind of green and blue that I did and this gray that were both made with a drop spindle. And so then after I spun the two of them, I then plied them together, which is when you do the drop spinning, you spin it one way when you're making your individual plies. And then once you've made the individual plies, you hold them together and you do the drop spinning again, but you spin the spindle the other way. And that's what plies them together. And that's why, like, if you're going to ply your yarn, if you're going to ply your yarn when you're doing drop spinning, or probably any kind of spinning, I would think. Oh, here we have a new person. Ashley Wester's Crochet and Knitting channel on YouTube says hi, and crocheting a peacock amigurumi. Oh, how fun. That sounds like tons of fun. If you come to the Sit and Stitch tonight, you can show us, because that would be really, I love peacocks. But as I was saying, when I use my drop spindle, if I know I'm going to ply something together, when I spin the individual plies, I spin them kind of tight, like I almost overspin them. I mean, it's not overspun. I know it's spinning because it's going to be a ply. So I overspin them all in, one direction, which my first time I go that way, which is clockwise. Like I just know I go like that across my leg to spin it. And then that way it's got a lot of extra twist in it, because then when you hold the two ends together and drop and do it again on the drop spindle, you spin it the other way, which in this case would be counterclockwise, and it kind of unspins itself together, and that's what makes it hold. So if you're going to ply them together, that's when you want to make sure you put extra twist in the first way. It looks easy, but it really isn't. You know what? It looks easy, and when you're first starting, it isn't so much. It can be really hard. Or it just depends on, some people pick it up faster than the others. But once you get the hang of it, it's actually like, it's not that difficult. Once you get the hang of it, like, you can get to the point where it looks easy, because for you, it becomes a muscle memory. It becomes something that's a lot easier. But yeah, there's a learning curve to it. 100% there is a learning curve to it. Oh, your peacock amigurumi is by Darn Good Yarn. The whole pattern or just the yarn? I don't know. It's good company though. Let's see. So yeah, so this was, like I said, I made the yarn, and then my mother was doing the stick weaving. And what we actually did with these, the pieces were just a little bit longer than this when we were done with them, is we would then fold them in half, sew the two sides together, stick a bar of soap in it, sew the top together, and put a little hangy bit, because we use them for gifts for other people within the medieval community, when we do like little gift bags and stuff for various awards or whatever. Because when you go camping, when we do these like 2-week long camping events, and I use these at home I use these at home, because it's wool, right? So what happens is you've made your soap sack, is that's what it is. Cause we fold it and pull it off. We fold it in half, toss the bar soap in there, sew it shut across the top, and make a little hangy loop. It's a soap sack, right? But it's wool. So as you're using the soap, the wool is felting. So as the soap is getting smaller, the bag is getting smaller. And then by the time you're done and the soap is essentially gone, you still have this little scrub, and because it's wool, it's still nice and scrubby, and you still have this little scrubby thing that you can then continue to use and just, put your liquid soap on or whatever. Like everybody else in my house just uses liquid soap. And normally I would use liquid soap, but when I have some of these, I use these because I just love the little scrubby of it. And then I just have those little suction cup hooks on my wall, and that's why it's got the little hangy loop. You just toss it on the hangy loop, and it's a little, it's self-cleaning washcloth, and you wash everything and hang it up and so on and so forth. And then when it's all done, you can use it like, I'll usually, when it's done in the shower, I'll like give it a really hot water rinse, and then use that for a face scrubber until I have the next one. And then when the next one is done, then I'll use that one for a face scrubber and take the old face scrubber and toss it at that point. Let's see. So Monique says, looks fun, beautiful. Let's see. And thinking of putting it in the drawer to prevent things from eating. Oh, bars of soap in your linen drawer. Oh, yes, exactly. Totally would work. You make the soap sack and you can put it in your drawer to prevent things from eating them. Yeah, certain soaps, you'd have to look into that, but certain soaps are like work well for bug repellent. I know a lot of people will put dryer sheets in their drawers. One, it's a bug repellent, and two, it also is like a deodorizer too. That would 100% work. Monique, you said you're allergic to wool. If you used it, you'd look like you had chicken pox. Oh, I mean, you could do this with something you're not allergic to, definitely. And there are things other than wool that felt. Whether or not you're allergic to those, I don't know. But anything that felts, you could do this with, and it would still felt as the soap got smaller. So would the bag. At a certain point, the bag is not going to get any smaller, though. Or you could still do it with something that doesn't felt at all, and it just wouldn't shrink, but it would still work. You just want to think about, bacterial things, like if you are talking about whatever. If it's safe to use it for a soap sack, then go ahead and use it for a soap sack this way. But to do stick weaving in general, it does not have to be wool. This is what it was done with traditionally because this is what they used. This is what they had. They didn't have acrylic and polyester and, yes, the soap in the drawer thing. I had totally forgotten that you could do that. I know some people, I remember now that I feel like it was my great grandmother, the one who taught me to crochet. When her soap got to those tiny, sometimes when your soap gets to the tiny pieces of the bar soaps, you'll have because of course, when you're talking about your great grandparents, well, my age, my great grandparents, in some cases, depending on your age, and if it's your great grandparents, your grandparents, your great grandparents, were alive during the Depression, right? And so they have all the tricks on saving money and stuff. So when the soap gets to be that tiny little sliver of soap left, they would take it and press it onto the next piece. My great grandmother would take it, and those were the pieces she would put in the drawers. I had totally forgotten about that until you were talking about that, Monique. While in stick weaving, it looks relaxing. It really is, and it's the trick is you want to make sure that you get the yarn that is your warp, right, to the yarn that is your to the stick that it's coming out of. That it's you want to make sure that the yarn that is your warp isn't significantly thinner than your stick, because if it is a lot, if I had a stick that was, this is maybe a 3/8 inch dowel, but if I had a 1/2 inch dowel here and this yarn, I'd be wrapping my weft yarn so loose that when I pull the sticks out, it would just be super, super loose, right? So you want to make sure you get your proportions right in that way. And of course, another thing you can do is make sure is double or triple your yarn when you're weaving. So, finding the right proportions as far as the size, the diameter of your stick, and the thickness of your weft yarn, of your warp yarn. And you can always double or triple your warp yarn as well. Remember, if you put if you're not running the yarn directly through the dowel, if you run a piece of just a loop of crochet thread through your dowel and then run the warp yarn through that loop, it doesn't matter if the warp yarn will fit through your dowel or not, because it's not going that way. So you can double or triple your warp yarn to make sure it's thick enough, right? And if you have a thicker dowel, and then you can double or triple your weft yarn if you want to. And then you want to make sure, you see how tightly I have this pulled, because it's very easy to not pull it tight enough And then like my mom's belt, because it was one of the first things I ever made, it gets like that sometimes because basically I it should have been shorter, or I should have woven more. You do want to make sure that you're pulled tight enough that you don't want to be so tight that you get these little buckles, right? You see how it's kind of buckling and stuff. You don't want to have it so tight that it's just messy looking, right? But you want to have it tight enough that you don't have holes. Unless that's the look you're going for. You know, especially if you're using it for like an art piece, then maybe you want the little holes, the little, you know, whatever floats your boat, dude. All right. But yeah, it's very relaxing. And when you're doing it by hand, like you can just so quickly, like every once in a while, you just kind of yank, pull up because you know, you do it with 4 or 5. It's very quick. You're just pulling up the little dowels and then going some more and pull up the little, and then the show's over and you're like, dude, I've got a belt already. You know, just make sure that you do some tying, you like tie a knot or something at the other end, because if you're really like in the zone, you don't want to discover that you've pushed everything off the other end. That would be so sad. And that would totally be something I would do. So tie a knot at the end or something so that you don't accidentally push it all off the other end. That would suck, right? So it does look relaxing, and it is. I do really enjoy it. And if anybody, like, if you know you're coming to a sit and stitch and you really, if there's something like this that you know you're coming to a sit and stitch and you really want to like talk about it or learn it, you can let me know ahead of time. You can always email, you can always send an email over to support@Crochet Foundry, right? And you can be like, I'm going to come to this sit and stitch this week, and I was going to try this. And if you let me know ahead of time, then I can like be prepared so that you're not like asking me a question at the sit and stitch and then I'm like, hold on, and I get up and run away. I mean, obviously I'm not the only person. It's not just like, you know, me and you there. There's lots of people there and everybody's talking. And if somebody gets up and runs away to get something, life is good. Because there's plenty going on. But if you tell me in advance, then I can make sure like, oh, I'm figuring out stick weaving, you know, I can make sure that I have something ready so that like I can kind of show you if you have any questions or whatever. So, because while the sit and stitches, like the main point is just to like be having fun and everything together, 100% I am there to answer questions as well. So if you have them, I am happy to answer them. It's the perfect time to be able to ask questions, because I can show you things on the camera. And when we can have a conversation, if there's something you don't understand, it's so much easier for me to answer questions in that live format. If you're stuck with something or whatever. And honestly, I am not picky about it being a Crochet Foundry thing. Okay. Sure, I would love it if everybody was making things from Crochet Foundry. But I'm a realist. That's just not the way that it is. So if you're working on something that's not from Crochet Foundry, that's fine, dude. Even if you have a question. I mean, I have been crocheting for most of my life. I have been knitting for a very long time. I have like I have over 300 crochet patterns and over 200 knit patterns out there. And, you know, I've taught all this. I'm a decent source for answers. And I do a lot of other crafts too. Like the lady said who was teaching the Viking wire weaving class, I'm one of those people who, if it's a craft, I just get it. Arts and crafts, I just get them. So, and I love teaching them because I love seeing that little light when somebody figures it out. They're like, oh, I got it, right? That is so fun. And then having somebody be like, look what I made. Like, you taught me this thing, or I was stuck on this thing and I couldn't get like my brain past this one little thing. And I helped them get their brain past that one little thing. And then they're like, look at all these things I did now that my brain went past that one little place where it was stuck. And I love it. I love helping people get to that point where they can create something and it just brings them happiness, right? We need more happiness in this world. So, so anything I can do to help increase the amount of happiness in the world is freaking awesome. Oh, thank you, Monique. I very much appreciate it. Monique says that you have great knowledge and are also a great teacher, Jessie. Thank you, Monique. So yeah, it's tons of fun. I love helping people out. So tonight I'm gonna get going. We had Taco Tuesday yesterday, so I get to have tacos for lunch here when we're done, which I'm very excited about. I love tacos. So tonight our sit and stitch is in 6 hours from 7 to 9 Eastern on Zoom, and I think I'm gonna continue to just send out a reminder maybe like 4 hours before every sit and stitch. I think I'm just gonna start doing that automatically, because it seems I think a lot of you are liking that. Like, I just send it to the newsletter list. So again, you can go over to Crochet Foundry and join the newsletter. If you just go to crochetfoundry.com and scroll down, there's a little place to join the newsletter right there. And I think I'm just gonna always have it send an email to the newsletter saying sit and stitch starts in 4 hours. Here's the link if you don't have it yet. And so yeah, tonight is, since it's the first Wednesday of the month, it's from 7 to 9 Eastern, and I will get the schedule out there ASAP that kind of says the first Wednesday is always this, the second Wednesday is this, the third Wednesday is this, and everything. So hopefully now more of you are going to be able to start coming to some of the sit and stitches now that we're going to have a variety of times, since you guys were awesome and answered that poll for times for me. And yeah, I think we're good to go. So I will hopefully see a bunch of you in like 6 hours. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And Friday is the September issue of Crochet Foundry. Yay! It's so pretty. You're gonna love it. Lots of fun illustrations from Kyla in it. So that's cool. And yeah, I'll see you around. Thanks, guys.